Okay, so if you just listened to Jordan Muela's episode in this last episode of this podcast, there's a part in there where he and I kind of go back and forth about the value of NOI. He makes some really good points, and I just have something more to say about it. I've been thinking a lot about it, so I really want to dedicate this little mini episode, these Saturday clips that I like to call the truth about rental property investing. No, the truth about property management. Even though this is the truth about rental property investing, I'm going to call it the NOI Mirage and the metric that actually moves the needle. I hope you're ready for this. Welcome to the Property Management Frame Breakers podcast. I'm your host, Pablo Gonzalez, and I am here to introduce you to the folks in the property management space that have broken the frame of what you may believe was possible. This podcast is presented by Vendoroo. It is your all-in-one AI solution for resolving your maintenance needs. Let's go. So here's the deal. At Lead Simple University, phenomenal event, Jordan's event, the big thing that I saw everybody talking about was NOI. And I think NOI is a great thing. I myself, I'm a rental property investor. I employ property managers, and I'll tell you, I'm real proud of my NOI, and I really wouldn't invest with somebody that isn't aware of the fact that I really care about NOI. But we may be overcorrecting on NOI. It seems like the conversation that's happening right now in the rental property game, in the property management game, is this idea that in this world, we all need to move towards NOI. That's what's going to differentiate us. That's what's going to help us be seen and be valued and escape the invisibility trap and escape the forever firefight and finally be treated right by our investors, by our landlords, by our clients, whatever you want to call them. And I just think that's a little bit misguided. Let me tell you why. Here's a couple of stories. A good friend of mine has a 5-door portfolio. Got into rental property investing because of a relationship that means a lot to her, and has grown through this provider that then manages her properties, widely known as the best property management company in town. In their market, they're the biggest one, they're the best one, and everybody knows it, right? Well, in one of her 5 properties, there was a problem tenant, and the problem tenant figured out who she was and started talking to her directly. She tried keeping the boundary and keeping it through the property manager and you know, the things that she was supposed to be doing. And at the end of the day, all the communication between them led to her really questioning, wait a minute, is my property manager really doing a good job? And dug a little bit in, realized that some things were happening that she didn't realize happened in rental property investing, and started really questioning the property manager. And at the end of the day, made a really tough decision, right? Like started just having these like arguments with her husband about, man, are they really the best rental property in town? The husband's like, man, I just don't want to deal with this. Like, whatever you think, you know, do whatever you want, but we have a relationship with these people. How are you going to back out of it? And what ended up happening, long story short, is she ended up saying, okay, just on this one property, I'm going to give it to another property manager. Doesn't seem like a big deal, right? She still has this good relationship with her property manager that has the other 4 properties in the portfolio, but you know, now this other property manager is in her portfolio. Let's say this other property manager does a couple things differently she likes. She might end up taking the whole portfolio over to this other one. And it had nothing to do with NOI. She's getting good NOI on all her properties so far. She's been treated extraordinarily well. But here's the problem. In these critical moments, when there was like a problem that's happening outside of the ordinary, it wasn't NOI that kept her with her property manager. It was the idea that, man, when I really needed it, you know, like I raised the flag a couple of times, I got standard responses, I would get a meeting if I asked for it, and they took care of it then, but then they disappeared. The property manager missed the boat on the idea that there was a critical situation happening that really needed babysitting, and I don't blame him for it. All right, I think that's completely normal. You are building a business that is supposed to be standardized, or else you're going to go crazy, right? Like if you're not going to treat everybody with like the processes and the systems and the policies that you have in place, then you're setting yourself up to fail, or at least you think you are. At least that is the standard that was once set. But here's the aha. If that property manager would have figured out a way to think, okay, no, I have my standard treatment of how I treat this client who's also my friend, but right now I really need to just babysit the hell out of it, right? If they would have been able to show up and just be there and over-explain and over-communicate and add some personal touch and be there for it, this wouldn't have happened. Here's another story for you, right? I have another buddy. I'm actually in Colorado staying with him right now because I'm visiting the NARPM site for broker owner. He, from 2009 to like 2022, went real hard at real estate. Figured out, got it, financial independence. 1030s won his way all the way up to the top, right? All the way up to financial independence, had great NOI on all his properties, was cash flowing on all of it. Everything was going great, but he realized he could cash out. He now had enough net worth that he could cash out, put it in the S&P 500 and let it ride. And he did this. He cashed out his whole portfolio right as I was going all in on rental properties, which I am all in on rental properties. And I'm like, why would you do this, dude? And he's like, dude, when you're doing this long enough, you realize that there's inevitably going to be pain that happens when it comes to owning rentals. And I know that I can just take this pile of cash, put it in the S&P 500, and just bank on the idea that for the next 30 years, I'm going to get 7 to 8%, and that's going to be good for me to retire. I'm a young man, and I'm good to go here. He wasn't thinking at all about, he was thinking about his NOI, he was thinking about his returns, but he was willing to give up that. We all know that once your portfolio is like pretty well paid off, your NOI, the returns you're getting are somewhere in like the 14 to 20% when it comes with leverage and all this different type of stuff of those types of assets that were bought in the early 2010s. So he gave up NOI, he gave up returns to not have headaches. And it wasn't like he just switched to the property manager across the street. He bounced out of the asset class. So that tells me, those are indicators that tell me that while we all really care about NOI, it's the really critical moments of pain that happen 1 to 3 times a year in this asset class for the investor, for your client, that are the moments where they're thinking, should I make a change? Should I go to a different property manager? Should I just get out of rental property investing? And the conversation I had with Jordan was really interesting, right? Because what we talked about was this idea that you can be the best at NOI, but you being the best at NOI than the person down the street, we're not talking about the difference between you and the next person that's going to like pitch your investor is getting them an extra $1,000 a month, right? Like for $1,000 extra a month, I think he said it, you'd eat a lot of turds, right? I agree. For 12,000 G's a year, I would eat some turds, right? I would deal with some pain for $12,000 a year to stay in this asset class. But it's more like, I don't know, $100, $150 extra a month. Maybe you're making them an extra $1,500 a year. For that type of money, your client is not willing to suffer. Right? They are not willing to think, man, the chips are down for me, but you know what? My portfolio manager does a really good job all the other times, so I'm just going to chill right here. Some do, some don't, but that is the critical moment. And it makes sense that this industry has pushed so much to standardization in an operation that seems like a forever firefight, that seems like you're always just like chasing the next emergency. If you can get to a standardized process and a standardized feeling and treating everybody the same and not being too high or too low, man, that's a huge success. And it's the best that you could have done. But things have changed. This agentic AI thing that we talk about, this idea that you are no longer going to be offered better tools to do your job, but you're going to be offered ways to have your job done for you so you can focus on critical things, to me is the solution for the metric that I think really matters the most when it comes to losing clients in rental property investing, and it's KTAs, kitchen table arguments. Both of these investors that I was talking about, the reason why they switched property managers and or bounced out of the asset class was to reduce that horrible conversation that happens whenever something critical comes up in a rental property, and that's you sitting across the table from your spouse saying, is this worth it? Should we stick with this team? Should we even stick in this asset class? I am so sick of this stuff. Why do we have to cut a $6,000 check? Couldn't they have figured this out? Can't they place a tenant sooner? Right? Like all these different things that if you as the property manager had the bandwidth to just really proactively communicate through, really just like be there for them, babysit them, give them the information, be sending them stuff during that time, right? Like adding that personal touch would completely mitigate this stuff, because the one thing you can say when you're having this issue is, yeah, we know we got into it for this. There's going to be issues, but look how much this person cares for us. Look how much they're here for us. And the big aha here is that with Agentic AI, right? For example, with Vendoroo, in maintenance, our clients, we do 80 to 85% of all their maintenance work orders beginning to end. You can internalize that two ways. AI is coming for my job. Sure, you can think about it that way, because at the end of the day, I don't agree with this idea that AI is not coming for your job. I think AI is coming for a lot of jobs, namely B- employees and below. But you could also think, oh, wait a minute. With this 80 to 85% of my work orders being done, what could I have my team be doing instead? Some of the clients at Vendoroo use it to go do business development and add extra 10 doors per month. Some of them, like Aaron Ivey, takes it to go hang out with his kids and watch them play baseball, or like make it home in time. Or you could devote those resources to those super highly critical moments. At the end of the day, 80 to 85% of your work orders, you could do 20 to 25% better, 50% better, and it really wouldn't move the needle. But those 15 to 20% of those work orders, if you were all in on that, right? Like at the house, providing hourly updates when it happens, being super available to the property owner to talk to the two spouses and have a conversation of what's going on and how you're on top of it. Really like overseeing a turn, right? Just being there, being available for showings, really like pitching people on living in this rental because you're such a good landlord, or your team could be doing that, reducing turn times, reducing pain. That to me is the number one thing you can be doing to reduce KTA, to reduce kitchen table arguments. And if you're to put the whole picture together and think to yourself, oh, you know what? I get it. I used to not be able to even think about doing this. I used to not be able to exclude myself from things I didn't want to be doing and spend my time doing the things that really matter the most, because all I had was softwares and then, generative AI, which made softwares even better. But now I can think, wait a minute, I can figure out what agents I can bring into my business, Agentic AI, to handle all this mundane standard stuff. And that could keep the experience standard for all the stuff that needs to be standard and handle it as all these things get better. And then I'm going to devote my people to do what only people can do, to be in the hospitality game, to be in the making people feel seen, heard, and valued game. Now you're building a completely different type of property management company. You're building this company that can make sure that you're delivering this NOI stuff, and not overburden your team, and be able to personalize when you need to. Right? Mark Brower in episode 2, he said something. He said, personalize too much, you're dead. Standardize too much, you're dead. I believe that that's true until now, until Agentic AI has now entered the chat. and now this is actually possible. So I wrote what I think is the best piece I have ever written on this in our newsletter that I'll link to in the show notes. So if you want to read this, I think you should start thinking about it. I think you should start thinking about this idea. We talk about the innovator's dilemma and how Blockbuster almost bought Netflix, decided not to because they thought that they could do it better than Netflix, and they were doing it better than Netflix, but at a certain point when DVDs by mail started blowing up for them, store managers complained that their revenue their dollar per square foot of store started going down, so they killed it, and now Blockbuster is dead. This is another one of those moments. This is a moment when, while everybody else is concerned about NOI, you can be thinking about KTAs. You can be thinking about building the property management company of the future that is built to reduce kitchen table arguments because you have standardized the standard and you have made yourself completely attached to the critical moments. Those are the moments where you can shine. So, NOI, to me, I like to think of it as the entrance to the dance. If you are not talking about NOI, you're just not at like the level, that most of your competitors at the best in the market are going to be. But NOI is not going to be a differentiator. So I don't see it as a silver bullet. I see it as a mirage. I see you differentiating around building a company that can do both the standard and the critical and devote the right resources to both as the type of company that can reduce the greatest metric that causes churn, KTA, kitchen table arguments. Let me know what you think about that.